Have you ever closed your eyes and tried to picture a life completely unlike your own, not just different in small ways, but fundamentally, breathtakingly removed from the modern rush and noise? Imagine for a moment a world where time moves not by the frantic ticking of a clock, but by the slow, majestic arc of the sun, a world where your purpose is etched not in digital code, but in sacred ink, and your work doesn't just earn a paycheck, it echoes through eternity. This is the world we're stepping into today, a world of hallowed silence and profound responsibility, a world where you are the guardian of divine words, the bridge between the gods and humanity. This is the life of a temple scribe in ancient Egypt. From the moment you awoke, your day was not your own, it belonged to a higher order. The first light brushing the horizon wasn't just dawn, it was the golden finger of the sun god Ra, a daily reminder of the cosmos you served. There were no morning commutes, no inboxes to clear. Instead, your path led you through towering, shadowed pylons into the heart of the temple, a space so sacred the very air hummed with power. Your tools were simple: a red brush, pots of ink made from soot and ochre, and sheets of the finest papyrus, but in your hands, these simple objects became instruments of fate. Every character you painted, every hymn you transcribed, was a thread in the fabric of reality itself, a plea to the gods for the Nile's flood, for the pharaoh's health, for the very stability of the kingdom. This wasn't merely a job, it was a sacred trust. A single mistake wasn't just an error, it was an offense that could disrupt the delicate balance of Maat, the cosmic order. But get it right, and your reward was beyond wealth or earthly praise. Your flawless work secured not only the favor of the gods in this life, but guaranteed your soul safe passage and an honored place in the field of reeds after death. Your name could live on for millennia, spoken with reverence long after the great stone monuments had worn to sand, so let's leave our world behind for a while. Let's walk together through the cool, incense-heavy halls of an Egyptian temple and discover what it truly meant to be the keeper of secrets, the voice of the divine, and the silent architect of eternity. This journey is about more than history, it's about uncovering a forgotten dimension of human purpose, but to truly grasp the weight of the red brush in your hand, you must first understand the pedestal upon which you stood. In the strict hierarchy of ancient Egypt, a scribe occupied a place of rare privilege and profound influence. You were part of the literate elite, a class so small and so powerful it sat just below the high priests and the pharaoh himself. Think of it this way: in a civilization built on the monumental, on pyramids, temples, and sprawling bureaucracy, the ability to read and write was not a common skill. It was the ultimate source of power. While the vast majority of the population toiled in the fields or in manual labor, your mind was your greatest asset. You held the keys to administration, to law, to religion, and to history itself. This wasn't just a job, it was a prestigious appointment that promised a life far removed from backbreaking physical work. This elevated status translated into tangible rewards that were the envy of the kingdom. As a temple scribe, you were compensated not with simple coins but with a share of the temple's vast offerings: prime cuts of meat, fine linens, bread and beer in abundance, and even parcels of valuable land. Your home would be among the finer ones, your family well provided for. You were exempt from the heavy labor taxes that burdened the common farmer. More than material wealth, your position granted you access. You moved in the same circles as viziers and nobles, your counsel sought on matters of state and spirit, your very presence was a sign of importance, and your words carried a weight that could shape decisions affecting the entire Nile Valley. This combination of wealth, influence, and divine connection made the path of the scribe the most coveted career for the sons of well-off families, a direct gateway to a life of purpose and prestige. Your day begins not with the blare of an alarm, but with the first faint chorus of birds greeting the sun god's return. There are no snooze buttons in this life, only duty. You rise from your bed, the simple wood frame far more comfortable than what most in the kingdom know, and your first thought is not of the day's tasks, but of purification. The night has passed, and with it comes the need to cleanse both body and spirit before approaching the divine. You make your way to the Nile's edge, the lifeblood of Egypt, cool and dark in the pre-dawn light. This is no casual bath, it is a ritual act. As you immerse yourself in the sacred waters, you are not just washing away sleep, but any lingering impurity, any shadow of chaos that might cling to you. You recite the ancient prayers under your breath, your words a soft murmur against the gentle lap of the river, asking for protection and worthiness to stand in the presence of the gods. Returning to your home, you dry yourself with a clean cloth and begin the methodical process of dressing. Your garments are a clear mark of your status. You do not wear the coarse wool of a laborer, but the finest, whitest linen, woven so thin it is almost translucent. Each piece is layered with precision, a simple kilt, a tunic, and perhaps a finer overgarment if you are to be in the inner sanctums. The feel of the crisp linen against your skin is a constant physical reminder of the purity required of you. There is no room for ostentation here. Your elegance is in the simplicity and cleanliness of your attire, a living embodiment of of divine order. Before you can begin your journey to the temple, you must nourish the vessel that will perform this holy work. Your breakfast is laid out for you, a flat round of warm bread, a jug of sweet, thick beer, the common drink of the land, consumed by all ages for its nutritional value, and a bowl of ripe figs. You eat with purpose, not indulgence, mindful that this meal fuels your sacred duty. As you break your fast, your mind is already turning inward, rehearsing the hymns you will transcribe, visualizing the precise hieroglyphs you must paint. You might review the temple's inventory lists you are tasked with updating, mentally calculating the vast stores of grain, oil, and incense that sustain both the priests and the gods themselves. This mental preparation is as crucial as the physical cleansing. To enter the temple with a cluttered or distracted mind is an insult to the deities you serve. Finally, you gather your scribble kit, checking each item with a reverent touch, the reeds, the palettes of black and red ink, the roll of papyrus. These are the instruments of your calling. Stepping out into the now bright morning, you join a stream of other priests and officials, all moving toward the same destination, the towering stone gateway of the temple complex. The air is filled not with chatter, but with a respectful silence, each person wrapped in their own contemplative preparation. As you pass through the massive pylon gates, leaving the bustling city behind, you feel the temperature drop and the lights soften. The world outside fades into a distant hum. You cross the sun-baked courtyard, your sandals whispering against the stone, and approach the hall's immense columns. With one final steadying breath, you cross the threshold into the dim, incense-rich darkness of the hypostyle hall, leaving the mundane world behind and fully entering the realm of the sacred. The world you now inhabit is one of breathtaking scale and profound symbolism, a universe carved in stone and dedicated to the divine. Your workplace is not a simple building, but a vast, walled city of the gods, a microcosm of Egypt itself. Think of the greatest temple complexes, like Karnak or Luxor. Their very names evoke power and eternity. As you pass through the towering first pylon gate, you leave the mortal realm behind. The massive walls, often decorated with scenes of the pharaoh smiting his enemies, aren't just for protection, they are a spiritual barrier, separating the sacred order within from the chaotic world outside. The outer courtyard is a hive of controlled, purposeful activity, bathed in the brilliant Egyptian sun. This is the public face of the temple, where the heartbeat of the community syncs with the divine. You might see farmers bringing their offerings of the season's first fruits, seeking the gods' blessing for a bountiful harvest. Priests move with purpose, overseeing the distribution of temple goods. The air is filled with the lowing of cattle from the sacred herds and the scent of baking bread from the temple kitchens. It's a place of commerce and connection where the divine institution touches everyday life. But your path leads you inward beyond the crowds. You move next into the hypostyle hall, and here the world transforms. The open sky vanishes, replaced by a forest of colossal columns, their capitals shaped like blooming papyrus and lotus flowers. The light is dim, filtered and dappled, falling in shafts through high, stone-grilled windows. The temperature drops noticeably, a coolness that feels ancient and reverent. The sounds of the outer court fade to a distant murmur, replaced by the soft scuff of sandals on stone and the low, rhythmic chanting of priests from a nearby chapel. The hall's walls are a masterpiece of carved and painted reliefs, telling stories of gods and pharaohs, their colors still vibrant in the filtered light. This space feels alive, a stone garden humming with a quiet, immense power. It is here that you begin to shed the concerns of the outside world, your mind focusing on the tasks ahead. But your journey is not yet complete. Beyond the hypostyle hall lie the most restricted areas of the complex, the inner sanctuaries, the offering halls, and the Holy of Holies where the statue of the god resides. Access to these rooms is fiercely guarded, permitted only to the highest-ranking priests and, of course, to you, the scribe. Your privilege to enter these spaces is a testament to the sacred trust placed in you. The air here is thick with the smell of burnt incense and myrrh, a scent so potent it clings to your linen robes. The darkness is deeper, illuminated only by the flickering light of oil lamps, their flames casting dancing shadows that make the god's image on the wall seem to move. The silence is absolute, a heavy, listening quiet. It is in these rooms that you might witness the daily ritual of awakening, clothing, and feeding the god, a ceremony you are later tasked with transcribing onto papyrus for eternity. Your personal sanctum, however, is often a smaller, quieter chamber adjacent to these holy places, the scriptorium or the house of life. This is where you and your fellow scribes perform your meticulous craft. Though still within the sacred precinct, this room has a practical workshop feel. Light streams in from a high window or an open roof, illuminating low wooden tables and stools. The walls are often lined with shelves and niches containing the temple's most precious treasures, stacked rolls of papyrus, each a sacred text, a historical record, or an administrative document. Here, the only sounds are the soft scratch of reed brushes on papyrus, the gentle grinding of ink on palettes, and the occasional whispered consultation between scribes over a particularly complex phrase or a rare hieratic sign. In this room, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of generations, you take your place in an unbroken chain of scholars, ensuring that the words of the gods, the deeds of the pharaoh, and the very memory of your civilization are preserved against the relentless passage of time. With your spirit cleansed and your mind focused, you now turn to the tools that transform your sacred duty into tangible reality. Your scribble kit is far more than a simple collection of objects. It is an extension of your own hand and mind, each item a testament to your elite status and the profound importance of your work. The quality and rarity of these instruments would be immediately recognizable to anyone in the kingdom, a clear sign that you are no common laborer but a master of the written word. The heart of your craft lies in the reed brush, your primary writing instrument. This is no crude stick dipped in pigment. The finest brushes are crafted from the stem of the rush plant, Juncus maritimus, carefully selected and trimmed to a precise point. You might even use a finer, more delicate rush known as the Egyptian reed, Phragmites australis. The end is not simply cut, It is meticulously chewed or frayed with a knife to separate the fibers into a soft, flexible brush tip capable of creating both the bold strokes of a hieroglyphic cartouche and the delicate, flowing lines of hieratic script. Holding this brush is a feeling of immense power and precision, the conduit through which divine words will flow onto the waiting page. Your inks are your sacred pigments, each color holding its own specific meaning and purpose. They are not stored in simple pots but on an ornate wooden palette, a beautiful object in its own right, often carved with your name or a protective prayer to the god Thoth, the patron of scribes. The primary ink is a deep, velvety black, and its creation is a complex alchemy. It is made from carbon black, typically soot collected from oil lamps or the burning of specific resins, meticulously ground and mixed with a gum Arabic binder and water to achieve the perfect consistency. This ink is the workhorse for the vast majority of your writing, from administrative ledgers to religious texts, but alongside it sits another, far more potent color, a vibrant, earthy red. This ink is crafted from red ochre, an iron oxide pigment mined from the desert, or sometimes from realgar, an arsenic sulfide mineral. The red ink is not used for the main body of text. Its purpose is emphatic and hierarchical. You use it to write rubrics, the headings and titles that introduce a new section of a text, setting it apart and signifying its importance. You might also use it to mark the beginning of a new day in a log, to highlight a key name, or to record the totals at the bottom of an accounting column. In religious texts, this red ink could be used to write the names of dangerous forces or apotropaic words meant to ward off evil, its color symbolizing power and danger. The presence of two distinct, high-quality inks on your palette is a luxury afforded only to the most elite scribes. The surface that receives your ink is perhaps the most telling symbol of your status, papyrus. This is not the cheap, rough paper of common record keeping. The finest, smoothest sheets are a luxury product, painstakingly manufactured in the marshes of the Nile Delta. The process is a closely guarded secret. The pith of the papyrus plant is cut into thin strips, soaked, and then laid out in two layers, one horizontal and one vertical, before being hammered, pressed, and polished into a single, incredibly strong sheet. These individual sheets are then glued together into magnificent scrolls, some reaching impressive lengths. The feel of high-quality papyrus under your hand is smooth and slightly fibrous, a perfect surface that absorbs the ink without bleeding, allowing for the crisp, clean lines that define formal Egyptian script. The very fact that you write on papyrus and not on broken pottery or limestone flakes used for casual notes instantly marks you as a member of the highest echelons of society. To keep your inks at their perfect consistency, you rely on a grinding stone and a small pot of water. The stone is a smooth, flat slab, often made of a fine-grained material like basalt or diorite. Each morning, you place a small lump of your solid ink cake onto the stone, add a few drops of water, and grind it with a smaller, handheld muller stone, releasing the rich pigment and creating the perfect ink for the day's work. This act of grinding is itself a ritual, a quiet, meditative preparation that centers your mind and connects you physically to the materials of your craft. The rhythmic, circular motion is a prelude to the flowing movements of your brush, a final, quiet moment of focus before you begin to channel the words of the gods and the orders of the state onto the pristine, waiting scroll. Now, holding these tools, you are ready to perform your most vital duty, the act of writing itself, but the script you are about to paint is no ordinary alphabet. It is a sacred and intricate puzzle, a fusion of art, language, and magic known as hieroglyphic writing. To the uninitiated, it looks like a beautiful wall of miniature paintings, birds, snakes' eyes, and geometric shapes. But for you, each of these glyphs is a precise unit of meaning, a sound, or a concept, and your entire training has been dedicated to mastering their every nuance. This is not a skill one picks up casually. It is a lifelong commitment to memorizing a system of over 700 distinct symbols, each with its own rules and exceptions. Your mind operates on multiple levels simultaneously as you work. Some hieroglyphs are phonograms representing sounds, much like the letters in our alphabet. But unlike our 26 letters, you have a far larger set to command, including a whole group that represent 2 consonants and another that represent 3. Other symbols are ideograms representing an entire idea or object itself. A picture of the sun simply means sun, and then there are the determinatives, perhaps the most subtle and clever part of the system. These are symbols placed at the end of a word that have no phonetic value at all. Instead, they act as semantic signposts, clarifying the meaning of the word that came before them. For instance, the word to hear would be followed by the determinative of an ear, while the name of a town would be followed by a symbol showing a crossroads or a plot of land. This 3-layered system, sound signs, idea signs, and clarifying signs, requires a breathtaking mental agility to deploy correctly and consistently. To manage the immense complexity of this sacred script for daily administrative tasks, you and your fellow scribes developed a simplified, cursive form known as hieratic. Think of it as the difference between carefully painting a formal invitation and quickly jotting down a grocery list. Hieratic is hieroglyphs in a hurry, a flowing, connected script written with your red brush on papyrus or pottery shards. Its characters lose their detailed pictorial quality, becoming streamlined and efficient for recording temple inventories, legal documents, letters, and literary texts. This is the script of your day-to-day work, the engine of the bureaucracy that keeps the kingdom running. Yet, even in its speed, hieratic demands absolute accuracy. For a mistake in a tax record or a land deed could have serious real-world consequences for the people involved. But when the task is for eternity, you return to the majestic formality of hieroglyphs. This is the script reserved for the walls of temples, the sides of massive stone sarcophagi, and the towering obelisks that pierce the sky. Here, there is no room for haste or abbreviation. Each ibis, each ankh, each falcon must be painted or carved with painstaking precision, its proportions perfect, its lines clean and confident. This is because you are not merely writing, you are performing an act of creation and maintenance. The ancient Egyptians believed that writing and depiction held a potent magical power. To write the name of a god or a pharaoh was to ensure their continued existence and influence in the world. To depict a ritual on a temple wall was to make that ritual effective for all time, endlessly repeating its magic. The written word was not a description of reality, it was a fundamental part of reality itself. This belief is the source of the immense, almost terrifying pressure that rests on your shoulders with every stroke of your brush. A simple slip, a misplaced symbol, or a misspelled divine name is not a trivial error to be corrected later. It is a cosmological offense. A mistake could render a magical spell inert, fail to properly honor a deity, or even destabilize the delicate balance of Maat, the divine order of the universe. The potential for divine displeasure is a constant shadow in your mind, a powerful motivator that ensures your focus never wavers. Your training burned this principle into you. There is no such thing as close enough. There is only perfection. Your flawless work ensures the sun will rise, the Nile will flood, and the gods will smile upon Egypt. Your carefully inked words are, quite literally, holding the world together. And so, with your mind sharpened by the complex script and your hand guided by years of discipline, you turn to the core of your existence within these hallowed walls, the meticulous documentation of the temple's entire world. Your primary duty is that of a divine record keeper, the unwavering eye that observes, quantifies, and preserves every facet of temple life. This is not dry, bureaucratic work. It is the sacred act of bearing witness, ensuring that both the spiritual and economic heart of the institution beats strong and true, season after season, generation after generation. Each day begins with the tangible evidence of the people's devotion, the offerings. A constant stream of goods flows into the temple storerooms: baskets of grain, bundles of linen, jars of honey and wine, live geese, and choice cuts of beef. Your first task is to account for every last item. You stand at a designated station, your papyrus roll laid out on a wooden table, and you carefully log each donation. A wealthy nobleman might present a whole ox for a specific prayer request. A humble farmer might offer a single, perfect pomegranate in thanks for a healthy child. To you, they are all equally sacred transactions between humanity and the divine, and you record them with the same precise hieratic script. You note the donor's name, the nature of the offering, the date, and the specific deity it is intended for. This log is far more than a simple receipt book. It is a permanent spiritual ledger, a record of piety that will be consulted by the gods and remembered for eternity. Once these offerings are received, they become part of the temple's vast economic engine, and your accounting continues. The granaries, towering mud brick silos filled to the brim with emmer wheat and barley, are the true measure of the temple's wealth and its ability to feed its staff, its workers, and the community in lean times. You are regularly dispatched to take inventory, climbing wooden ladders to measure the depth of the grain, calculating volumes, and noting it all down. You track the disbursement of this grain as weekly rations to the army of bakers, brewers, and craftsmen who depend on the temple for their livelihood. A single mathematical error in your calculation could mean a family goes hungry, or worse, that the offerings for the god's daily meal are insufficient. The weight of this responsibility is as real as the stone of the walls around you. The same meticulous care is applied to the temple's living assets, its sacred herds. You walk among the cattle in their pens, counting them, noting their condition, and recording the births of new calves. You oversee the shepherds who tend to the flocks of sheep and goats, ensuring their numbers are correct. These animals are not merely livestock, they are walking, breathing capital, a future source of offerings, food, and leather. Your records ensure that not a single animal is lost to negligence or theft, protecting the temple's wealth from both mortal and supernatural misfortune, for to lose a divine asset is to show disrespect to the God who owns it. But your most profound duty unfolds when you're called into the inner sanctums to record the rituals themselves. Standing in a respectful silence against a cool stone wall, you watch the high priests perform the daily ceremony of awakening, clothing, and feeding the god's statue. Your hand moves swiftly across the papyrus, not in the flowing hieratic of accounts, but in careful, measured notes. You document every gesture, every spoken incantation, every item of food and clothing presented to the deity. This record is not for the account books, it is a sacred template, a precise instruction manual that will ensure this same ritual can be performed with perfect exactitude every single day for all time. Your written word freezes the fleeting moment of worship into eternal practice, guaranteeing that the gods remain content and engaged with the world of men. Finally, your duties extend to the realm of people. You maintain logs of important visitors, foreign dignitaries seeking an audience with the god, or high officials from the pharaoh's court. You record their names, their titles, and the nature of their business. You also document the temple's own human resources, keeping track of the complex schedules of the priestly rotations, noting who is on duty for which festival, and managing the payroll for the countless laborers. In this capacity, you are the institutional memory of the entire complex, the one person who knows where everything and everyone is supposed to be at any given moment. Your flawless records are what allow this miniature holy city to function with seamless efficiency, its spiritual work supported by an unshakable foundation of perfect earthly order. Of all the responsibilities entrusted to you, none carries a weight quite like the task of copying a funerary text. This goes beyond simple record keeping or even transcribing a hymn for a temple ritual. When a wealthy official or a member of the royal family commissions their own copy of the Book of the Dead, you are not merely writing words on a page, you are architecting their entire eternity. The scroll you create will be rolled and placed in their tomb, a divine guidebook clutched in the hands of the mummy or laid carefully beside them, its power activated the moment their soul begins its perilous journey into the afterlife. The pressure is immense, for a single flaw in your work could mean the difference between everlasting paradise and utter, unending oblivion for the person who trusted you with their fate. The text itself is not a single, standardized book as we might imagine it today. It is a collection of nearly 200 individual spells, incantations, and magical formulas, each with a specific purpose. A patron might select a unique combination of these spells tailored to their wealth, their personal fears, and their hopes for the world to come. Your first step is always to consult the master copies kept in the temple's house of life, the sacred library where these powerful texts are stored. You unroll the ancient papyrus with reverent hands, careful not to crumble its edges, and you study the precise order and wording of the spells your patron has chosen. This is not a job for haste. You must absorb the exact hieroglyphs, the specific illustrations, and the crucial rubrics that accompany each spell, instructions on how and when they are to be used. Then you begin the painstaking work of reproduction. You prepare a fresh, blank papyrus scroll of the highest quality, its surface smooth and inviting. Your finest black ink is ground to a perfect consistency, but this project also demands your most potent red ochre, for you will use it to write the all-important rubrics. These headings, written in the vibrant red ink, are the instructions for the soul. They might say, "Spell for not dying a second time in the realm of the dead," or "Words to be spoken upon reaching the hall of judgment." They are the signposts that will guide the deceased through the terrifying and unfamiliar landscape of the Jewat, the Egyptian underworld. The contrast between the stark black of the spells and the bold red of the instructions is visually striking, a deliberate design to make the most critical information instantly accessible to the traveling soul. Alongside the text, you are also an artist. Scattered throughout the columns of hieroglyphs are intricate vignettes, small painted illustrations that depict the scenes described in the spells. These are not mere decorations, they are magical images that give power and reality to the words. You might paint the weighing of the heart ceremony, showing the god Anubis carefully placing the deceased's heart on a scale balanced against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth. You depict the monstrous Ammit, the devourer of the dead, lying in wait, her body a terrifying fusion of crocodile, lion, and hippopotamus, and you always paint a triumphant image of the deceased, alive and whole, standing before a majestic Osiris, the king of the afterlife. The belief is profound. To depict a successful outcome is to help manifest it. Your brush does not just paint a picture, it paints a future. The consequences of error during this process are the stuff of nightmares. There is no delete key, no way to simply scrape away a mistake from the precious papyrus. A misspelled divine name, a forgotten determinative, or a poorly drawn magical symbol could render an entire spell powerless. Imagine the horror of a soul arriving before the 42 judges in the Hall of Osiris, trying to recite the negative confession, a spell declaring all the sins they have not committed, only to find a crucial word missing from their papyrus, leaving them speechless and condemned. A mistake in a protective spell could leave them vulnerable to the demons that stalk the dark paths of the underworld. A flaw in an illustration of a divine gate might prevent it from opening for them. Your absolute precision is the only thing ensuring their heart will not be devoured, that they will remember their name, and that they will have the answers they need to overcome every obstacle. You are quite literally writing their ticket to paradise, and there are no second chances. This overwhelming responsibility is a burden you carry with every deliberate, prayerful stroke of your rad brush, making the creation of each Book of the Dead the most spiritually significant and emotionally taxing work you will ever do. While the meticulous transcription of rituals and funerary texts forms the backbone of your duty, a far more creative and personally profound task also falls to you: the composition of original hymns and prayers. This is where your role transcends that of a simple copyist and enters the realm of a true poet-priest, a channel for divine inspiration. You are not just preserving words, you are crafting new ones, fashioning beautiful, potent vehicles of praise designed to capture the attention and secure the favor of the gods themselves. A successful hymn is more than a song, it is a strategic act of diplomacy with the divine, a carefully worded petition meant to maintain the fragile balance of the universe. The creative process begins not with a blank papyrus, but with deep contemplation and study. Before you can write a single line for a deity like Osiris, the lord of the afterlife, or Isis, the mighty magician and mother, you must immerse yourself in their mythology. You spend hours in the temple library, unrolling ancient texts that detail their attributes, their epic stories, their sacred symbols, and the epithets traditionally used to address them. You are not seeking to invent something entirely new, but to weave together established sacred truths into a fresh and compelling tapestry of praise. The goal is to remind the god of their own greatness, their power, and their responsibilities to creation in the most eloquent and flattering way possible. You are, in essence, writing a love letter to the cosmos on behalf of all humanity. The structure of these hymns follows a sophisticated poetic meter, though it is different from what we might recognize today. Egyptian poetry relied heavily on parallelism, a rhythmic structure of thought where a concept is stated and then immediately restated in slightly different, often more elaborate terms. This creates a powerful, hypnotic cadence when chanted aloud. A line might praise Osiris as the foremost of the Westerners, the Lord of the Sacred Land, using two parallel titles to emphasize his supremacy in the afterlife. This parallel structure isn't just for beauty, it reinforces the central idea, hammering it into the consciousness of both the listener and the deity, making the praise impossible to ignore. Your choice of language is paramount. You employ grand, sonorous epithets that act as ceremonial titles for the god. For Isis, you might call her the Great of Magic, she of the 10,000 names, the winged scarab who protects the sun god. Each name reveals a different facet of her power and mythology, building a cumulative picture of immense, benevolent strength. You weave in vivid metaphors drawn from the natural world, comparing the god's presence to the rising sun, their voice to the roar of the Nile cataracts, their justice to the unerring flight of a falcon. These images ground the divine in the familiar, making their awesome power relatable and tangible to the human priests who will recite your words. Once composed, your hymn is put to its ultimate test not on the page, but in the air of the temple. During the daily ceremonial rituals, the lector priests, trained in the sacred art of declamation, will chant your words in a resonant, rhythmic monotone. The sound itself is considered a powerful, generative force, as the chant echoes through the stone halls, amplified by the acoustics of the sanctuary. The words cease to be mere descriptions and become active agents of worship. They are believed to travel directly to the ears of the god, carrying the adoration and petitions of the people. A beautifully composed hymn, perfectly delivered, is like a key that unlocks divine benevolence, encouraging the god to continue upholding and ensuring the sun rises, the crops grow, and chaos is kept at bay. The success of your composition is measured in its effect. Does it move the priests who chant it? Does it feel sonorous and powerful when spoken aloud? Most importantly, does it seem to please the god? A period of stability and prosperity following the introduction of a new hymn is seen as a sign of its efficacy, a divine stamp of approval on your creative work. In this way, your craft as a wordsmith is directly tied to the well-being of the entire nation. Your ability to find the most perfect, pleasing, and powerful combinations of words is not an artistic luxury. It is a vital component of national security, a gentle but constant steering of the universe back towards order, harmony, and life. Within this sacred ecosystem, you are never an island. Your work constantly intersects with a web of other individuals, each holding a distinct rank and purpose, and navigating these relationships requires a deft understanding of both protocol and personality. The temple is a microcosm of the kingdom itself, a strict hierarchy where knowing your place is as important as knowing your craft. Your interactions are a delicate dance of respect, obedience, and occasionally, subtle intellectual assertion. Most frequently, you work directly with the high priests, the powerful intermediaries between the earthly and the divine. When a new ritual text is needed or a hymn must be composed for an upcoming festival, it is often a senior priest who summons you. These encounters are formal. You approach them with a bowed head and a respectful posture, your scribble kit tucked under your arm. They dictate the content from memory or from an ancient master scroll they hold, and your task is to transcribe their words with flawless accuracy. There is little room for creative input in these moments. Your value lies in your silent, perfect execution. The pressure is palpable, for these men are not just your superiors, they are the chosen vessels of the God's will. A misplaced word or a moment of inattention is not just a professional failure, it is a spiritual lapse in their presence, yet there is a profound, unspoken trust in this collaboration. They rely on your skill to give permanent, potent form to their sacred knowledge, and you rely on their wisdom to guide your hand. It is a partnership built on mutual, silent respect for the weight of the duty you both share. Your responsibilities also bring you into contact with the pharaoh's secular administrators, men whose concerns are more about the material wealth of the kingdom than the favor of the gods. A royal scribe might arrive from the vizier's office, demanding an immediate audit of the temple's grain reserves to calculate this year's tax obligations. Or a general from the army might require a detailed inventory of leather and linen from the temple workshops to equip his troops for an upcoming campaign. These interactions can be laced with a subtle, underlying tension. You are a servant of the temple first, protective of its assets and its autonomy. They are servants of the state, intent on marshaling all of Egypt's resources for the pharaoh's projects. The etiquette here is different. It is the language of bureaucracy and negotiation rather than divine reverence. You must provide the requested information, for the pharaoh is himself a god, but you also have a duty to advocate for the temple's needs. This often involves presenting the numbers in a way that highlights the institution's ongoing expenses and sacred commitments, a delicate act of persuasion performed through meticulously prepared reports and inventories. Your mastery of numbers and words becomes your shield, protecting your temple's interests while maintaining the flawless obedience expected of you. Perhaps the most complex relationships, however, are the ones you have with your fellow scribes. Within the scriptorium, a clear pecking order exists. Senior scribes, with decades of experience and deep theological knowledge, review the work of their juniors. A young apprentice might bring you his freshly copied text for correction, and you must check it line by line. your red brush poised to circle an error in the faintest of marks. This is where egos can quietly flare. Correcting a colleague's work requires immense tact. To publicly humiliate him for a mistake is to disrupt the harmony of the workspace, a violation of MAD. Instead, you might call him over and phrase it as a question. This epithet for Hathor, here the master scroll in the library, uses a different determinative. Should we consult it together to be certain, this approach turns a correction into a collaborative search for truth, preserving his dignity while ensuring the work is perfect. Yet, beneath this necessary camaraderie, a quiet competition simmers. Everyone knows that exceptional skill and political shrewdness can lead to promotion, perhaps to the role of chief scribe of the temple, or even a coveted position in the royal court. You notice who is chosen for the most prestigious tasks, like composing a hymn for the pharaoh's jubilee, and who is left to endlessly tally jars of oil. Alliances are formed and favors are traded. You might help a colleague decipher a difficult section of hieratic in exchange for his support later when assignments are being distributed. This gentle politicking is an unspoken part of your life, a reminder that even within these holy walls, human ambition and the desire for recognition are powerful forces that must be carefully managed alongside your sacred duties. The path that led you to this sacred scriptorium was not one of sudden appointment or simple inheritance. It was a grueling marathon of the mind and spirit, a decades-long trial by fire that began when you were little more than a child. Your journey to becoming a temple scribe started not with a brush in your hand, but with the simplest of tools, a potsherd and a piece of limestone. For the sons of scribes, priests, and minor officials, education was the only route to a life beyond manual labor, and it demanded absolute commitment from the very first day. Your father would have brought you to the temple school, the house of life, a place that served as both library and classroom, and presented you to the severe, intimidating figure who would shape your future, the Sebe, the teacher. Your early education was a relentless cycle of memorization and repetition, designed to break down your childish focus and rebuild it with the discipline of a master craftsman. There were no stimulating games or gentle encouragements. The atmosphere was one of strict, unyielding rigor. You spent your first years learning to read and write the hieratic script, the flowing cursive used for everyday documents. Your textbooks were not stories of adventure, but dry, formulaic model letters and moralizing texts like the Instruction of Hetty, which extolled the virtues of the scribble profession while graphically describing the miserable fate of every other occupation. Look, the text would say, there is no profession without a boss except for the scribe. He is the boss himself. This mantra was drilled into you, a constant reminder of the elite future that awaited you if you could only endure the present. Your primary writing surface was the ostraca, a broken piece of pottery, or a flake of limestone, a cheap and abundant material perfect for practice. With a red brush clutched in your inexperienced hand, you would spend hours each day copying the same signs, the same phrases, over and over again. The teacher would write a line at the top of the tablet, and your task was to replicate it perfectly in the space below. A wobbled line, a misshapen hieratic character, or a spilled pot of water would be met with swift and often physical correction. The threat of the rod was a constant motivator. An ancient school text puts it bluntly, a boy's ears are on his back, he listens only when he is beaten. This harsh discipline was not seen as cruelty, but as a necessary forge for your intellect, burning away laziness and imprecision to reveal the sharp, resilient mind of a scribe beneath. As you grew older and mastered the basics of hieratic, the true challenge began, the monumental task of learning the hieroglyphic system. This was the apex of your training, the sacred knowledge that separated a mere clerk from a true temple scribe. You were introduced to the vast array of logograms, phonograms, and determinatives, a system of immense complexity. You had to memorize not only the sound value and meaning of each sign, but also its aesthetic proportions and the precise order in which to draw each stroke. You practiced drawing the signs on wooden boards covered in a thin layer of gesso, which could be smoothed over and reused. Perfection was the only acceptable standard. A poorly drawn owl glyph or an incorrectly sized ankh was not just an error, it was a failure of reverence. Beyond mere writing, your education expanded into the advanced sciences and arts necessary to run a state and serve the gods. You were drilled in mathematics, learning a complex decimal system to calculate everything from the area of a field to the supplies needed for a battalion of soldiers. You studied geography to draft maps and manage logistics, astronomy to track the stars for religious festivals and predict the all-important Nile flood, and theology to understand the deep myths and rituals you would be documenting. This was a holistic education designed to create not just a writer, but a wise administrator, a learned priest, and a keeper of civilization's deepest secrets. You were being molded into a living library. The final test of your worth was the commissioning of a complete work. As a senior student, you would be given a precious sheet of papyrus and instructed to produce a flawless copy of a significant text, perhaps a hymn to Thoth or a passage from the pyramid texts. This was your masterpiece, the proof that your years of toil had borne fruit. Every hieroglyph had to be perfectly proportioned, every line of hieratic impeccably spaced, the ink consistent and without blotches. When you finally presented this work to your teachers, their stern approval was the culmination of your entire youth. You had not just learned a skill, you had undergone a transformation. The careless boy was gone, and in his place stood a disciplined, knowledgeable, and worthy vessel of sacred knowledge, ready to take his place among the most trusted and elite members of society, finally prepared to pick up the brush not as a student, but as a Temple Scribe. Yet for all its profound responsibility, this sacred act of writing is also what elevates your existence from a simple occupation to a true calling. Every stroke of your brush is a declaration of order against the ever-present threat of chaos, a force the Egyptians called Isfet. You are not just keeping records, you are performing a continuous act of creation, mirroring the primordial act of the god Ptah, who spoke the world into existence. The belief is absolute. The written and spoken word hold generative power. By accurately transcribing the sacred rituals, you are not describing them, you are reenacting them, making them eternally effective. Your words ensure that the daily ceremony of feeding the god actually nourishes his spirit, that the hymns of praise truly reach his ears, and that the protective spells around Egypt's borders remain strong and active. A single administrative document listing the temple's cattle is, in its own way, a magical act that secures those very animals from disease or theft, because you have officially declared their existence and their belonging to the god. This deep spiritual significance is most powerfully felt in your work concerning the pharaoh. The king is not merely a political ruler, he is the living embodiment of Horus on earth, the vital linchpin between the human and the divine. Your meticulously kept records of his deeds, his victories in battle, his offerings to the temples, his decrees of law are not just historical accounts. They are affirmations of his divine right to rule and proof of his maintenance of Mad. By inscribing his titulary and his achievements on temple walls and official scrolls, you are actively participating in the magic that sustains his reign. You are reinforcing his power, ensuring his authority is recognized by both his people and the gods, and helping to channel their divine blessing onto his kingdom. A neglected or inaccurate record could be seen as a crack in this divine foundation, a subtle weakening of the cosmic order that protects everyone. Ultimately, your life's work accumulates into a legacy that transcends your own mortality. The scrolls you fill, The walls you inscribe, they form the eternal memory of your civilization. They are the means by which the gods themselves will remember Egypt and its people. Your flawless writing ensures that the names of the gods are never forgotten, that the rituals continue to be performed correctly, and that the balance of the universe is maintained. Long after your own heart has been weighed against the feather of truth, your handwritten words will remain, continuing their silent, potent work. They will guide future generations of priests, inform the decisions of future pharaohs, and stand as an eternal testament to a world where humanity spoke to the divine through the sacred, meticulous art of the scribe. In this way, you achieve a form of immortality not through grand monuments, but through the enduring power of perfect, purposeful script. This life of sacred precision and immense privilege, however, comes at a steep and often painful cost. For every moment of divine connection and intellectual satisfaction, there is an equal measure of physical discomfort and mental exhaustion that you must learn to endure. The serene image of the scribe, bent gracefully over his papyrus, belies a reality of constant, grinding strain that tests the limits of your body and the resilience of your mind each and every day. Your most immediate and persistent adversary is the very environment meant to protect you, the dim, sacred interior of the temple. To preserve the sanctity and coolness of the inner halls, natural light is a controlled and limited commodity. You work for hours on end in a perpetual twilight, illuminated only by the flickering, uncertain light of a simple oil lamp. The flame casts a small, intimate pool of light on your papyrus, but everything else fades into shadow. This forces your eyes into a relentless, squinting focus. The fine, black lines of hieratic script swim and blur if your concentration wavers for even a second. The strain is a dull, constant ache behind your eyes, often blooming into a throbbing headache by the day's end. There is no relief, no option to step outside for a brighter space. The holy nature of your work demands this shadowy seclusion, and so you learn to push through the pain, your vision a precious resource you spend without hesitation in service to the gods. This physical toll extends far beyond your eyes. The posture of your craft is one of sustained tension. You sit on a low wooden stool, hunched over a writing board placed across your lap or on a low table. Your back is bent, your neck craned forward, your shoulders rounded as you hold yourself perfectly still to ensure each brush stroke is clean and exact. You might hold this rigid position for hours, completely absorbed in a complex passage, only to finally straighten up and be met with a sharp, shooting pain along your spine and a deep stiffness in your neck and shoulders. The repetitive motion of your hand and wrist, the delicate control required to form hundreds of perfect characters, leads to its own unique soreness, a persistent ache in the muscles of your forearm, and a slight tremor of fatigue in your fingers. These are the silent, accumulated injuries of your art, a physical tax paid daily for the privilege of creating eternity. Yet, these physical discomforts are almost trivial compared to the immense psychological weight you carry. The pressure for perfection is not a vague, but while the physical and mental demands of your calling are relentless, they are far from unrewarded. This life of intense pressure is balanced by a lifestyle of comfort and privilege that places you among the most fortunate in the kingdom. Your compensation is not merely a wage, it is a tangible share of the divine abundance that flows through the temple. Each month, you receive a generous distribution of goods that would be the envy of any farmer or laborer. Your rations include hefty sacks of the finest emmer wheat and barley, far more than your family could consume, allowing you to trade the surplus for other luxuries. You are given jugs of strong, sweet beer and robust wine from the temple's own vineyards, high-quality linen for new garments, and even portions of meat from the cattle and geese offered to the gods. This isn't just payment, it's a direct participation in the temple's wealth. a constant physical reminder that your sacred work sustains you in the most literal sense. Beyond these material comforts, your position grants you one of the most coveted privileges in all of Egypt, exemption from the state's compulsory labor demands, known as corvée. While the vast majority of men are regularly conscripted for backbreaking weeks or months of toil hauling stone for the pharaohs' monuments, dredging irrigation canals under the burning sun, or serving in the army, you are sheltered. Your mind is recognized as a national asset too valuable to be risked in manual labor. This freedom is not just a practical benefit, it is a mark of immense social distinction. It means you can always provide for your family, your health is not broken by grueling work, and your time is dedicated entirely to your intellectual and spiritual craft. You are spared the dust, the exhaustion, and the danger that defines the lives of so many others. This elevated status is reflected in the respect you command from all levels of society. When you walk through the streets of the city, commoners step aside with a deferential bow. They address you as scribe or learned one, their voices tinged with a mixture of awe and wariness. They understand that your reed brush holds power over their lives. You record their harvests for the tax assessors, draft their legal contracts, and write the letters that connect them to distant family. You are a gatekeeper of information and administration, and this knowledge earns you a deference that is both genuine and calculated. Even nobles and military officers, who might outrank you in the secular hierarchy, treat you with a certain respect, for they know that your records could either burnish their legacy or call their accomplishments into question. Your authority comes not from physical strength or martial prowess, but from the silent, undeniable power of the written word. The potential for advancement further sweetens this esteemed life. A talented and diligent temple scribe is perfectly positioned to climb the administrative ladder. Your deep understanding of temple economics, law, and ritual makes you an ideal candidate for promotion to chief scribe of the entire institution, overseeing all its record-keeping and a staff of junior scribes. From there, the pharaoh's vast bureaucracy is open to you. You could be recruited to serve as a royal scribe accompanying generals on military campaigns to document spoils and casualties, or as a diplomatic scribe recording treaties with foreign powers. The most gifted might even ascend to the rank of vizier's scribe, helping to administer the entire nation. This career path offers not just increased wealth, but greater influence and the chance to shape the destiny of Egypt itself, all while remaining within the respected and powerful class of literate elites. Your life, therefore, is one of rare security, profound respect, and boundless opportunity, a comfortable oasis of influence built upon the foundation of your sacred and indispensable skill. The food that fuels your sacred work is a direct reflection of your esteemed status, a daily reminder of the prosperity your position affords. Your diet is built upon the foundational staples of all Egypt, but in far greater quantity and quality than what is available to the common laborer. Bread and beer are not just sustenance, they are the twin pillars of your every meal. The bread you eat is made from the finest, most finely sifted emmer wheat, baked into soft, round loaves, often enriched with honey or dates for sweetness, a luxury few can regularly enjoy. The beer, a thick, nutritious, and slightly sweet concoction, is a constant presence, consumed throughout the day not for intoxication, but for its caloric energy and vital nutrients, a practical necessity in a land where water could sometimes be unsafe. But your table boasts far more variety. Platters of vegetables appear regularly: onions, leeks, garlic, cucumbers, and lentils, stewed or raw. Bowls of figs, dates, and grapes provide a sweet finish. Fish from the Nile, such as mullet and catfish, are a common source of protein, smoked or salted to preserve them. The most telling sign of your privilege, however, is the regular appearance of meat. While the average Egyptian might taste meat only during a major festival, you receive generous portions of beef, goose, and duck from the temple's own herds and flocks, a share of the very animals offered to the gods. This protein-rich diet, high in calories, is meant to sustain your intense mental focus, but it also sets the stage for a hidden physical toll that comes with your sedentary existence. For while your body is well nourished, it is also profoundly underused in the ways that define the health of most Egyptians: the farmer in the field, the laborer on the monument, the soldier on the march. Their lives were defined by constant, grueling physical exertion that, while leading to injury and early aging, also built strong bones and muscles and kept body fat low. Your life is the opposite. You spend the overwhelming majority of your day seated on a hard stool, hunched over your work, your only movement the delicate, repetitive motion of your hand and wrist. This lack of vigorous activity, combined with a diet rich in carbohydrates from bread and beer, creates a slow accumulation of body fat, particularly around your middle, a softness that would be unseen on the taut bodies of the workers outside the temple walls. This lifestyle quietly exacts a specific price on your health: the coarse stone grit from the grindstones used to mill your flour, which finds its way into even the finest bread, slowly wears down your teeth over a lifetime, leading to significant dental wear, abscesses, and chronic pain. The constant cramped posture required for writing stiffens your joints and strains your spine, making arthritis in your back, neck, and especially your fingers a common and painful companion in your later years. You might even suffer from hemorrhoids from long hours seated on hard surfaces. These are the chronic, aching afflictions of the elite, the literal physical cost of a life of the mind. Yet, you are far from helpless in the face of these ailments. Your privileged status grants you access to the best medical care in the kingdom, the temple physicians. These doctor-priests are experts in a sophisticated medical science that blends practical observation with spiritual belief. They will examine you, diagnose your complaints, and prescribe treatments from a vast pharmacopoeia of natural remedies. For your dental pain, they might prepare a paste of crushed barley and yellow ochre to place against the aching gum, or a filling of resin and malachite to plug a cavity. For your inflamed joints, they could prescribe a poultice of willow leaves and honey, whose natural salicylic acid precursors offer real anti-inflammatory relief, or recommend therapeutic massage with linseed oil. Their treatments often come in the form of extensive prescriptions that combine practical ingredients with magical incantations, as they believe healing requires addressing both the physical and spiritual cause of an illness. A typical remedy for back pain might involve drinking a tea made from celery and coriander, while a recited spell banishes the demon thought to be causing the ache. This combination of empirical knowledge and ritual power reflects the Egyptian worldview, where every aspect of life, including health, is interconnected with the divine. So while your body bears the unique marks of your sedentary, scholarly life, you are also cushioned by the best comforts and most advanced care your civilization has to offer, a trade-off between the vitality of physical labor and the long-term security of the elite. Yet, this life of intense focus and pressure is not without its release. When the final brushstroke of the day is laid upon the papyrus and your tools are carefully cleaned and stored, you step out of the temple's cool, sacred silence and back into the warm, bustling embrace of the world. Your time away from your duties is a vital counterbalance, a chance to reconnect with your community and your own humanity through simple, joyful pleasures that recharge your spirit for the next day's work. The transition is as tangible as it is welcome, trading the scent of incense for the aromas of baking bread and brewing beer that fill the evening air. One of your greatest joys is the informal gathering at a local beer house with your fellow scribes. Here, the strict hierarchy of the temple complex softens into the easy camaraderie of colleagues who share the same unique burdens and triumphs. Seated on simple stools around a low table, you pass around a large jug of beer, its contents far more potent and flavorful than the daily ration. The conversation is a lively mix of shop talk and good-natured gossip. You might debate the most elegant way to phrase a particularly difficult hymn to Osiris, complain about the impossible handwriting on an ancient ledger you were tasked with copying, or share a laugh over a junior scribe's unfortunate ink spill earlier that day. In these moments, you are not just a priestly official, you are a friend, sharing jokes, stories, and the unspoken understanding that comes from walking the same demanding path. For a more private and strategic challenge, you often turn to the board game of Senet, a beloved pastime at all levels of society. The game board, often a simple wooden tray with 30 squares laid out in 3 rows, becomes a miniature battlefield of wits and fate. You and your opponent take turns throwing casting sticks to determine the moves of your pieces, navigating a path that symbolizes the soul's journey through the underworld. The game is a thrilling mix of skill and chance, and a friendly wager of a spare measure of grain or a new red brush often heightens the stakes. The click of the pieces and the rattle of the sticks provide a satisfying rhythm to your evening, a mental exercise that is entirely for your own amusement, free from the weight of cosmic consequences. When the season turns and the great religious festivals arrive, your role shifts from observer to engaged participant. During the beautiful festival of the valley, you join the ecstatic procession as the statue of the god Ammon is carried from Karnak temple across the river to visit the mortuary temples of the departed pharaohs on the west bank. The air vibrates with the beat of drums, the clatter of sistrums, and the chanting of thousands of voices. You are no longer just the recorder of hymns, you are singing them at the top of your lungs, swept up in the collective euphoria and devotion. Similarly, during the Opet festival, you witness the triumphant return of the god's statue to his home temple after days of celebration. The sheer spectacle of these events, the vibrant costumes, the overwhelming sounds, the palpable energy of the crowd, reinvigorates your faith and reminds you of the living, breathing community that your meticulous work ultimately serves. And in your most quiet and personal moments of reflection, you might even pick up your brush for yourself. While your professional compositions are for the gods and the state, you occasionally indulge in the creation of personal poetry or a short, lyrical letter to a family member in a distant nome. These private writings, free from the rigid formulas of religious texts, allow you to play with language simply for the beauty of it. You might describe the peace of watching the sun set over the Nile, the cleverness of your cat, or the depth of your affection for your wife, using metaphors and turns of phrase that would never find their way into an official document. This is writing for the pure pleasure of expression, a gentle reminder that the skill that defines your duty can also be a source of profound personal joy and connection, weaving the sacred art of the scribe into the very fabric of your own human experience. While the world of the scribe was overwhelmingly a male domain, the rigid hierarchies of ancient Egypt did occasionally permit a remarkable exception. The path to literacy and the prestigious title of scribe was not entirely closed to women, though it was a narrow and heavily guarded gate reserved for the most elite circles. To find a female scribe, one would not look among the administrative offices, but within the innermost chambers of the royal palace or the sacred precincts of a major temple dedicated to a powerful goddess. These women were not copyists of tax records. Their literacy served a far more specific and often musical purpose, intertwining with their roles as priestesses and royal consorts. The most plausible avenue for a woman to achieve scribal training was through her association with temple worship, particularly in the cult of a goddess like Hathor, the patroness of music, dance, and joy. The most common title we find for literate women is chantress or shemayet. These women were not mere singers, They were highly trained priestess musicians responsible for performing the intricate hymns and rhythmic incantations that were essential to daily temple rituals. To perform these compositions with the required precision and power, a deep understanding of the text was necessary. It is believed that the most senior and devoted chantresses would have been taught to read and write the hieratic scripts of these hymns, transforming them from performers into keepers of sacred musical knowledge. Their literacy was a functional tool, directly serving their primary duty of creating perfect, efficacious worship through sound. Within the royal court, the possibility expanded slightly for the women closest to the pharaoh. Queens and princesses, particularly during the New Kingdom, enjoyed unprecedented influence and access to education. A royal daughter, destined for a political marriage or a high priestesshood, would be educated alongside her brothers in the palace school. For her, literacy was a diplomatic and administrative necessity. She would need to oversee her own vast estates, manage her staff, and potentially correspond with foreign courts. There is evidence that some royal women, like the powerful Queen Tiye, wife of Amenhotep III, were not only literate but actively involved in state affairs, likely relying on a cadre of female scribes and attendants within their own household to manage their correspondence and assets. This suggests a parallel feminine bureaucracy operating within the palace walls, serving the needs of the highest-ranking women in the land, yet these exceptions only serve to highlight the profound male dominance that defined the profession. The entire education system was designed for boys. The harsh, physical discipline of the schoolhouse, the long hours spent in the company of male teachers and students, and the ultimate goal of preparing for a career in the state or temple bureaucracy were all structured around male social and professional expectations. A family would see little reason to invest the immense resources required to educate a daughter when her expected path was marriage and motherhood. Her value to the family's legacy was achieved through childbirth, not through administrative postings. The social norms of the time firmly placed a woman's domain within the home, and while women could own property, run businesses, and testify in court, the highest echelons of intellectual and religious power were conceived as a masculine sphere. This gender division is subtly reinforced by the very artifacts we study. While we have countless statues and depictions of male scribes seated cross-legged with their papyrus rolls, there are vanishingly few contemporary images of a woman in the same pose, engaged in the act of writing. When women are shown in relation to writing, it is often as a subject, a goddess recording the years of a pharaoh's reign, or a noblewoman holding a scribble palette not as a tool for use, but as a symbol of status and piety, an attribute indicating she is a lady of the house who is literate enough to appreciate its power. The absence of evidence is itself a powerful testament to the societal barriers that existed. Therefore, the female scribe remains a fascinating anomaly in the ancient Egyptian world. She was not a challenger to the system, but a highly specialized product of it, her literacy a rare and carefully applied extension of her accepted roles in worship and royalty. Her story adds a layer of nuance to our understanding of the period, revealing that while the path was narrow and steep, the desire for knowledge and the power of the written word could, on rare occasions, find a way to transcend the rigid gender conventions of the ancient world. Your connection to the pharaoh is not a distant, abstract loyalty to a far-off ruler. It is a direct, daily, and deeply personal professional relationship that forms the very core of your purpose within the state's machinery. The king is more than a political leader. He is the living embodiment of the god Horus, the divine force that maintains Mad, the fundamental order of the universe, against the ever-encroaching chaos of Isfid. Your meticulous work as a scribe is one of the primary instruments through which this divine power is expressed, recorded, and made permanent for all eternity. You are the amplifier of his voice and the guarantor of his legacy, a vital link in the chain that binds heaven to earth, One of your most solemn duties is the drafting of royal decrees and proclamations. When the pharaoh decides to grant a parcel of land to a loyal general, to pardon a prisoner, or to impose a new tax on imported goods, the thought becomes reality only when it passes through your hand. A royal messenger arrives with the essence of the command, delivered from the king's own lips or those of his vizier. Your task is to transform this spoken intention into a flawless legal document, written in the precise, formal language of the court. You choose your words with immense care, for the resulting papyrus will carry the absolute weight of royal authority. The decree will be sealed with the royal cartouche and dispatched to the relevant officials, who will enact it without question. In this capacity, you are not just a writer, you are a conduit for the will of a god-king, and the precision of your language ensures his will is executed exactly as he intended, maintaining order across the vast length of the Nile. Your role in cementing the pharaoh's earthly and eternal legacy is even more profound when you are called upon to compose the texts that will be carved into the very stone of his monuments. Imagine standing at the base of a newly erected obelisk or within the echoing hall of a mortuary temple, a slab of smooth, prepared limestone before you. Using a master grid, you carefully paint the hieroglyphic accounts of the king's great achievements, his decisive victory over the Nubians, his successful trading expedition to Punt, or his pious dedication of a new shrine to Ammon. This is not history as we understand it, it is sacred propaganda, a narrative designed to project an image of invincible strength, divine favor, and unwavering justice. Your words, once carved by the stonemasons, will become an immutable part of the landscape, telling a story of glory and power to every generation that passes by for thousands of years to come. You are crafting the official memory of the nation, ensuring that the pharaoh's reign is remembered not as it necessarily was, but as it should be according to the principles of Maat. This extends to the most sensitive work of all, composing the texts that actively legitimize his divine rule when a new pharaoh ascends to the throne, particularly if his lineage is uncertain or his rise to power was unconventional. A powerful theological narrative must be constructed and disseminated. You might be tasked with researching ancient religious texts to find a suitable prophecy he can be said to have fulfilled, or drafting a new hymn that describes his birth as the direct result of a union between his mother and the god Ammon. These texts are then circulated among the priesthood and inscribed on temple walls, providing a divine sanction for his authority that quells any potential dissent among the nobility or the priesthood. Your skillful pen provides the theological foundation for his reign, weaving his earthly biography into the timeless myths of the gods, transforming a mere man into an unquestionable divine instrument. Your work makes his rule not just accepted, but inevitable in the eyes of the people. Ultimately, through every decree you draft, every victory you record, and every divine connection you script, you are performing the essential function of reinforcing the state's infrastructure. The pharaoh's power does not rest on soldiers alone, it is built on perception, administration, and belief. You are a chief architect of that perception, a master of that administration, and a curator of that belief. Your flawless records ensure the economy that funds his projects runs smoothly. Your widely published accounts of his victories deter potential enemies. Your theological compositions secure the unwavering support of the powerful priesthood. In a very real sense, the entire bureaucratic and ideological engine of the Egyptian state is powered by the ink of scribes like you. Without your constant, accurate, and inspired work, the delicate balance of power could easily falter, the royal narrative could fracture, and the divine order that keeps the Nile flooding and the sun rising could be threatened. Your value is immeasurable, for you provide the intellectual and spiritual framework that allows the living God to rule. but the steady rhythm of your daily duties is dramatically reshaped by the powerful, unstoppable pulse of the seasons, particularly the most significant event in the Egyptian year, the inundation of the Nile. This is not merely a weather pattern, it is the lifeblood of the nation, a divine event that dictates the entire calendar and sends ripples of both chaos and celebration through the temple walls, demanding a complete adaptation of your workflow. When the river first begins to swell, turning from its clear blue to a rich, fertile red with silt from the African highlands, a palpable energy courses through the entire kingdom. For the farmers, it is a time of anxious hope. For you, the scribe, it signals the beginning of the most intense and critical administrative period of the year. Your first responsibility is to become the official witness to the flood's progress. You are dispatched to the riverbank with your measuring device, the Nilometer, to record the daily rise of the water. These precise measurements are not simple data points, they are prophecies. The height of the flood will determine the fertility of the coming season. Too low and famine looms, too high and villages are washed away. Each measurement you carefully note on your papyrus scroll is a vital piece of intelligence for the pharaoh and his viziers, allowing them to forecast the harvest, plan grain storage, and adjust tax quotas for the entire kingdom. The pressure to be accurate is immense, for the economic stability of Egypt rests on the numbers you produce during these crucial weeks. As the floodwaters recede, leaving behind a thick layer of black, life-giving silt, a new frenzy of work begins. The redefinition of the land itself means that all existing property boundaries, wiped away by the water, must be resurveyed and re-recorded. You join teams of surveyors, rope stretchers, and officials in the fields, your scribble kit at the ready. As they measure and argue over the precise plots of land, you are the arbiter of truth, meticulously drafting new cadastral maps and legal documents that will define who owns what for the next year. These are some of the most contentious documents you will ever create, as wealthy landowners often try to bribe officials to shift boundaries in their favor. Your integrity is your greatest shield, for a single manipulated record could rob a family of their livelihood and bring the displeasure of the goddess Maat, the embodiment of truth and justice, upon your head. This period is exhausting, spent largely outdoors under the sun, but it is also deeply satisfying as you play a direct role in restoring order from the beautiful chaos the Nile has wrought. While the inundation brings a surge of secular administrative work, the great religious festivals inject a different kind of vibrant chaos into your routine, transforming the temple from a place of quiet contemplation into the epicenter of national celebration. The most demanding of these is the magnificent Apis festival. For several weeks, the normally serene city of Thebes erupts into a continuous, deafening street party. The primary duty of the priesthood is to facilitate the sacred journey of the god Ammon from Karnak temple to Luxor temple, but your duty is to document every single moment of this mobile divine spectacle. You are part of the procession, moving alongside the towering bark that carries the god's veiled statue, your writing board in hand. You must record the names and titles of every important dignitary in attendance, log the staggering quantities of food and beer distributed to the ecstatic crowd, and note the precise order of the rituals performed by the high priests at each stopping point along the route. The air throbs with the beat of drums, the shaking of sistrums, and the roar of thousands of voices chanting hymns, the very hymns you likely helped to compose. It is a challenge to maintain your scribble focus amidst the sensory overload, but you must, for this record will become the official template for the festival in years to come. The papyrus you fill during Apis is less about cold accounting and more about capturing the electric energy of faith, ensuring the ritual magic of this celebration can be perfectly recreated to renew the pharaoh's divine power and, by extension, the strength of Egypt itself. These periods of high intensity are both exhilarating and draining. The sheer volume of work during the inundation and the major festivals often forces you and your fellow scribes to adopt a more streamlined, almost frantic version of your normal script. Your normally elegant hieratic hand might devolve into a quicker, more abbreviated form, a script within a script, just to keep pace with the demands of the moment. You work longer hours, fueled by extra rations of beer and bread, your back aching and your eyes straining by the end of each day, yet this hectic pace is intertwined with a powerful sense of celebration and communal purpose. You are not just a bystander to these defining events, you are an active participant and the chief chronicler, your swift brush ensuring that the chaos of the flood and the joy of the festival are both translated into a lasting, sacred order on the page. Beyond your mastery of the sacred scripts, your true value to the temple and the state lies in a different, more universal language, the precise and unyielding logic of mathematics. Your reed brush is not merely a tool for hymns, it is an instrument of calculation, and your papyrus serves as a spreadsheet for the gods, the vast economic engine of the temple complex, its granaries, its workshops, its herds, runs on a river of numbers that you alone are trained to navigate. The Egyptian mathematical system, a sophisticated decimal system that cleverly used fractions, is your native tongue for quantifying the world. You don't calculate with abstract numbers, you calculate with tangible things. A shipment of grain isn't just a number, it's a series of precise notations representing hecats, the standard unit of volume. You use a fraction like the eye of Horus not as a symbol, but as a practical measurement for dividing a hecat into smaller, manageable portions for bread rations. Your mind is a constantly whirring abacus, calculating the yield of the fields, the output of the breweries, and the supplies needed to feed hundreds of temple workers and priests for a month. A single error in your multiplication or division could mean a shortfall in offerings for the gods or hunger for the people who depend on the temple's bounty, making your mathematical precision a direct contributor to both spiritual and earthly stability. This numerical prowess finds its most critical application in the monumental task of architecture and construction, projects that are always ultimately in service to the divine. When the pharaoh commands a new pylon gate or an additional courtyard for the temple, you are summoned from the scriptorium. You are not a laborer hauling stone, but the intellectual force behind the operation. Using known ratios and geometric principles, you help the master architects draft the initial plans on gridded ostraka. Your most vital role, however, is in logistics. You are tasked with the breathtakingly complex calculations of resource allocation, determining the exact number of bricks required for a wall based on its dimensions, the volume of mud and straw needed to make them, the quantity of stone blocks to be quarried and transported, and the massive amounts of food and water required to sustain the army of workers for the duration of the project. Your calculations determine the pharaoh's tax demands on surrounding villages for these supplies and the temple's own contributions from its stores. This work transforms abstract architectural ambition into a concrete list of needs, a budget written in hecats of grain and blocks of limestone. Your math ensures that the project does not falter due to poor planning, that the divine house is built without delay, and that the resources of Egypt are marshaled with flawless efficiency. Yet your most profound fusion of writing and calculation occurs under the vast, star-filled canopy of the night sky. Your expertise extends to the sacred science of astronomy, for the gods do not only reside in stone statues, they traverse the heavens. You are a meticulous observer of the celestial cycles, understanding that the movement of the stars and planets is the ultimate clock and calendar, governing the timing of every significant religious event. You master the complex civil calendar of 365 days, but you know it slowly drifts out of sync with the solar year. You therefore keep a separate, meticulous astronomical calendar based on the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, known to you as Soptit. This event, when the star becomes visible just before dawn after a period of invisibility, coincides with the annual Nile inundation, the true beginning of the new year. Your prediction of this event is crucial for preparing the kingdom for the flood. This celestial knowledge directly guides your sacred writing. You understand the precise astronomical alignment of the temple itself. The main axis of Karnak, for instance, is oriented so that on the winter solstice, the setting sun illuminates the Holy of Holies deep within the sanctuary, a phenomenon that turns the entire stone structure into a giant astronomical instrument for one glorious evening each year. When you are tasked with inscribing the walls of a new temple or a royal tomb, you use this knowledge to align certain texts and depictions with specific celestial events. You might inscribe a hymn to the sun god Ra in a specific chamber so that the first ray of sunlight on the summer solstice falls directly upon the god's name within the text, magically charging it with solar power for the entire year. You understand the Decan stars, 36 constellations that rise consecutively throughout the night, each governing a 10-day week. You paint these stars and their divine personifications on the ceilings of tombs and inside the lids of coffins, creating a star clock to help the deceased tell time through their eternal journey in the afterlife. In this sacred work, your brush does not just write about the gods, it uses the map of the heavens to physically connect your words to their celestial power, demonstrating that a scribe's duty was to be the vital link between the earthly, the divine, and the cosmic. Yet for all its spiritual purpose and intellectual reward, the world of the scribe was not immune to the baser temptations of human nature. Your position, nestled at the very heart of power and information, presented daily opportunities for corruption and placed you squarely in the path of dangerous political currents. The same reed brush that could inscribe a soul's path to paradise could also, with a few deliberate strokes, alter a tax record to ruin a rival or accept a bribe to conceal a theft from the temple's own storerooms. The immense trust placed in you was a cloak that could also hide a multitude of sins, and the ethical dilemmas you faced were as constant as the grind of your ink stone. Consider the sheer power you wielded in mundane administrative tasks. You are the one recording the harvest yields from a village. A wealthy landowner might discreetly offer you a generous share of his finest wine or a sleek new copper dagger if you would be so kind as to adjust the number of sacks of grain he owes in taxes, shaving a few off the total. The temptation is real. The temple would never miss such a small amount, and the extra wealth could significantly improve your family's comfort. To refuse might earn you a powerful enemy, to accept makes you an accomplice. Similarly, you might be pressured by a high-ranking priest to quietly erase the name of a disgraced official from a building inscription, effectively wiping them from history to serve someone else's political agenda. These were not victimless crimes. A falsified grain record meant less food for the temple workers and their families. An altered land survey could dispossess a farming family of their ancestral plot, condemning them to poverty. Navigating the treacherous waters of court intrigue was another inherent hazard of your role. As a keeper of records, you were often privy to sensitive information, the true size of the royal treasury, the private correspondence between the pharaoh and his vizier, the potential weaknesses in a military campaign's supply lines. Powerful factions within the royal court, ambitious nobles jockeying for influence, might seek to bend your loyalty. They wouldn't ask for a blatant forgery, the request would be far more subtle. A high official might invite you to a private meal and casually inquire if you happened to notice any concerning figures in the latest inventory of the royal armory. Or a general might suggest that your next report on the state of the temple's workshops would be most favorably received if it highlighted certain successes and downplayed certain delays, all to make a rival official look incompetent. Your silence or your carefully chosen words could become a currency more valuable than gold, and choosing the wrong patron could see you swept away in a sudden purge just as easily as it could bring you promotion. The spiritual consequences of such actions were believed to be dire and eternal. Your entire education was steeped in the concept of mad, the cosmic order of truth and justice. To violate that order for personal gain was to invite not only earthly punishment but divine retribution. The ultimate fear was the weighing of the heart ceremony in the afterlife. You had spent your entire career writing spells to ensure the deceased's heart would not testify against them, but what if your own heart, heavy with the weight of lies and stolen wealth, dragged down the scale against the feather of truth? The monstrous Amit, the devourer, awaited those who failed this final judgment. This was the constant internal struggle, the immediate, tangible benefit of a bribe measured against the terrifying, eternal prospect of annihilation. For a scribe who truly believed in the gods he wrote about, this was the most powerful deterrent of all, a spiritual check on the temptations that your powerful position made so readily available. And so, as your fingers trace the final glyph on a temple wall, or you carefully roll a completed papyrus scroll, you are engaging in an act that defies the very essence of time. The words you inscribe, the records you keep, the hymns you compose, they are not for the moment, they are crafted for eternity, a conversation you are starting with generations so far in the future that their world is beyond your wildest imagination. Your legacy is not measured in the wealth you accumulate or the status you hold, but in the silent, enduring power of the written word to bridge millennia. The very papyrus you handle, crafted to last for generations, and the stone you etch, meant to withstand the elements, are testaments to a civilization obsessed with permanence, and you are the chosen instrument of that eternal will. Think of the inscriptions you painstakingly copy onto a temple pylon, detailing the pharaoh's great victory. You are not just recording a battle, you are building a monument in language. Long after the king's body has returned to dust and the memory of the battle has faded from oral tradition, your words will remain. 1,000 years from now, a priest in a changed Egypt will still be able to stand in that same hall, run his fingers over the grooves your artisans carved, and read the story you helped tell. He will understand the might of the king, the favor of the gods, and the name of the scribe who ensured it was never forgotten. Your professional signature, your "I did this," etched subtly into the periphery of the text, is a quiet claim to immortality, a personal thread woven into the grand tapestry of history. The papyrus scrolls you create, stored in the temple's sacred archives, the House of Life, are even more vulnerable to time, yet they hold a different kind of magic. While stone shouts to the heavens, papyrus whispers its secrets, preserving the intimate details of daily life that monuments ignore. The inventory list you draft today, the letter you write for a grieving widow, the medical text you copy for a physician, these seemingly mundane documents will, in ages to come, become priceless windows into a lost world. Future scholars will not just study the grand narratives of pharaohs from your work. They will understand the price of linen, the structure of the economy, the fears and hopes of ordinary people, and the beautiful, flowing cursive of your own hand. They will know your name not from a statue, but from the unique flair of your hieratic script, a personal fingerprint that makes you, across a vast gulf of centuries, unmistakably and intimately you. This is the profound paradox of your existence. Your daily life is one of rigid routine, focused on the immediate task of pleasing the gods and serving the state. Yet the true weight of your actions lies in their unimaginably long echo. You live and work in the present, but your mind must operate on a timescale of eternity. Every stroke of your brush is a deliberate act of faith, a faith that the language you use will never become truly dead, that the stones will not crumble, that the papyrus will somehow be spared from fire, flood, or decay. You are placing a message into a bottle and casting it into the ocean of time, trusting that someone, someday, will find it and understand. This connection to the future is a sacred responsibility as heavy as any other, for you are the guardian of memory, the voice of your entire age, chosen to speak on its behalf to those who are yet to be. Yet for all the meticulous records you keep for others, there is one final, deeply personal document you must commission, a text that holds the key to your own soul's destiny. Your entire career has been spent preparing the path to eternity for pharaohs and nobles, but now you must turn that expertise inward, ensuring your own journey through the Juat is guided by the same flawless precision you bestowed upon others. The contemplation of your own death is not a source of fear, but the ultimate application of your craft, a final project where you are both the scribe and the subject, the creator and the beneficiary of your life's work. Your first and most crucial act is to commission your own personalized Book of the Dead. This is not a generic scroll picked from a shelf, it is a bespoke guide tailored to your specific fears, hopes, and knowledge of the divine. Having spent a lifetime copying and studying these texts for others, you possess an unparalleled understanding of which spells are most potent, which prayers are most pleasing to the gods, and which illustrations carry the greatest magical power. You sit down with a trusted junior scribe, one whose skill you have personally vetted, and you carefully select the sequence of spells that will protect you. You might include a particularly powerful version of the spell for not dying a second time, or a detailed injunction against having your heart speak against you in the hall of judgment. You dictate the text with absolute authority, knowing that a single misplaced word in your own funerary papyrus would be the ultimate professional and spiritual failure. You supervise the painting of the vignettes with a critical eye, ensuring the image of Osiris is regal and welcoming, that the scale of the heart weighing is perfectly balanced, and that your own depiction in the scroll is youthful, healthy, and vibrant, ready to take its place among the blessed dead. This intimate knowledge of the afterlife texts also directly shapes the inscriptions within your own tomb. While a noble might be content with standard prayers to Osiris, your chapel walls are a masterclass in tailored theology. You inscribe not only the common offering formulas to ensure a perpetual supply of bread and beer, but also more obscure and potent hymns drawn from the deepest temple archives, texts you helped preserve and that you know will resonate powerfully with the specific gods who preside over the gates of the underworld. You ensure your name and titles are carved with exquisite perfection, surrounded by protective cartouches and symbols of life and stability. You might even include a unique autobiographical inscription, a brief summary of your life's work written in the first person, stating your devotion to Maat and your flawless service to the gods. This serves as a permanent, stone-made testament for the divine judges to read, a curated highlight reel of your righteousness etched for eternity in the very rock of the West Bank. Most profoundly, you carry an unshakable belief that your scribble skills themselves will be your greatest asset in the world to come. The ancient spells make it clear that the afterlife is fraught with challenges that require specific knowledge to overcome. Demons and guardian deities will block your path, demanding you recite their secret names and reveal the hidden knowledge of the routes through the darkness. As a temple scribe, you have spent your life memorizing these very names and maps. You have copied the texts that detail the topography of the Juat, the names of the 42 judges in the Hall of Osiris, and the correct confessional declarations to make before each one. Where a common soul would have to rely solely on their written papyrus, you have the immense advantage of having internalized this sacred information. You believe that when your boss soul is separated from your body and faced with a challenge, your trained mind will recall the correct incantation, your scribe's tongue will pronounce the divine words with perfect clarity, and your intimate familiarity with the gods' true natures will allow you to navigate the celestial bureaucracy with the confidence of a seasoned administrator. In the final, ultimate judgment, you trust that your heart will not betray you, for a lifetime of upholding Mat through meticulous, honest work has made it as light as the feather of truth, ensuring your place in the eternal field of reeds, where you will continue your sacred duty of writing for the gods themselves forever. While our journey has been deeply immersed in the world of the Egyptian scribe, it's fascinating to step back and see how this vital role manifested in other great river valley civilizations, particularly in Mesopotamia. The scribes of the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers shared our elite status and intellectual burden, but the tools of their trade and the very texture of their daily lives were profoundly different, shaped by an environment that lacked Egypt's most precious resource, the papyrus plant. Where we wrote with a brush on a smooth, plant-based sheet, our Mesopotamian counterparts etched their thoughts into the very earth itself, using a stylus to press wedge-shaped marks into soft clay tablets. This fundamental difference in writing material created a completely different sensory experience and set of skills. Imagine, instead of the gentle scratch of a red brush, the soft squelch and resistance of damp clay under pressure. Their primary instrument was not a brush but a stylus, typically made from a sharpened red with a triangular tip. They didn't paint graceful lines, they impressed a series of methodical, angular wedges into the tablet's surface, a writing system we now call cuneiform. This act was more physical, more like carving in a malleable medium that would then be left to dry in the sun or fired in a kiln for permanence. A mistake for us could be washed away with water. A mistake for them often meant starting the entire tablet over or carefully smoothing the clay to try again. Their finished work was not a lightweight scroll that could be easily carried, but a heavy, fragile library of stone-like tablets, each one a permanent, unalterable record. The context of their work also reflected the different political and spiritual landscapes of their city-states. Mesopotamian scribes were deeply embedded in the immense, complex bureaucracy of temple and palace administrations, often focusing more intensely on the economic and commercial aspects of rule. They produced vast archives of legal contracts, receipts for commodities like barley and wool, and meticulous records of labor forces and land ownership. While Egyptian scribes also handled such accounts, our role was more intrinsically tied to the direct service of a god in his stone house and the preservation of rituals for the afterlife. The Mesopotamian scribe was arguably more of a pure administrator and legal notary, their work essential for the functioning of a mercantile economy based on trade and credit. Their importance was undeniable, but their connection to the divine, while present, often felt more filtered through the machinery of the state than the immediate, daily communion we experienced within our temple walls. Despite these differences in method and focus, we were united across the deserts by a shared, sacred truth. In both Egypt and Mesopotamia, the ability to read and write was a form of power so potent it was often considered a divine gift, closely associated with a patron deity of wisdom for us, Thoth, for them, Nabu. We both belonged to a small, privileged class that stood between the illiterate masses and the ruling elite, acting as the essential gears in the clockwork of civilization. Whether etching hymns into eternity or recording the price of a bushel of grain, we were the guardians of memory, the architects of administration, and the silent partners to power. This glimpse across the cultural divide reveals that while the clay of Mesopotamia and the papyrus of Egypt created different scribal experiences, the fundamental reverence for the written word and the elite status of those who mastered it was a constant, a cornerstone upon which the ancient world was built. So as our time together in the cool, hallowed halls of the temple comes to a close, we're left with a profound appreciation for the unique tapestry of a scribe's existence, a life woven from threads of intense devotion, unparalleled skill, and rare social privilege. This was not a mere occupation, it was a sacred calling that demanded every ounce of one's intellect and spirit. You were the living database, the master archivist, and the divine stenographer for an entire civilization, a human lighthouse guiding the light of knowledge and culture through the vast, dark seas of time. In a world without the hum of servers, the glow of screens, or the convenience of printers, the steady hand of the scribe and the sharpness of their mind were the only things standing between memory and oblivion. Your days were a beautiful, exhausting paradox. You enjoyed a life of comfort, exempt from backbreaking labor, dining on food from the god's own table, and commanding respect from all who crossed your path. Yet you willingly subjected yourself to a different kind of grueling work, the eye-straining hours in dim light, the relentless pressure for perfection, and the terrifying spiritual weight that came with knowing a single errant mark could disrupt the cosmic order. This blend of elite status and immense responsibility created a unique class of individual, one who was both a revered scholar and a dedicated civil servant, a poet of the gods and a meticulous accountant for the state. You were the essential bridge, the critical link that connected the earthly realm of pharaohs and farmers to the celestial domain of the gods, ensuring that the dialogue between humanity and the divine never faltered. And that perhaps is the most powerful legacy of your life's work. Every inventory list, every royal decree, every magical spell you transcribed was an act of faith in the future. You were writing letters to an audience you would never meet, trusting that your words would echo across centuries, that your name would be spoken with reverence long after the great monuments had worn down to sand. You understood that a civilization is not remembered by its wealth or its weapons, but by its stories, its laws, its prayers, and you were the dedicated keeper of them all. So the next time you effortlessly look up a fact on your phone or print out a document, take a moment to offer a quiet thanks to the ancient scribes of the world, the original guardians of human knowledge. We've explored just one path today, one life of many in the vibrant tapestry of the ancient world. It makes you wonder, if you could step back in time, which ancient profession would you choose? Would you be a scribe, a farmer, a priest, or perhaps a craftsman? Let us know down in the comments what calls to you and why.